From claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt.
EWTN Radio presents The Miracle Hunter with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Hey, it's been a big week of miracle news. If you've been following along, you can go to the Facebook page of the Miracle Hunter, and you can check out the different things that I've been posting this week, perhaps things related to the finding of the incorruptible saint, Saint Teresa of Avila. You can also see stories about approvals from the Vatican related to Marian apparitions. It's been some interesting news that's been coming up this past couple weeks. But we've got a great show ahead for you today. I think this is a big anniversary coming up. We've got the 800th anniversary of the first stigmata, that is, a person bearing the wounds of Christ, in the history of the world. That, of course, is St. Francis. And I'm working on a new documentary about the stigmata, so stay tuned to EWTN television for that. We'll be doing stories on St. Padre Pio, St. Francis of Assisi, and others in the history of stigmata. I think it's one of those topics that Catholics, Protestants, and otherwise, they're all aware of. It's kind of an interesting mystical phenomena that we have in our world. So I'm excited to be producing that new program on the stigmata. So I'll let you know about that. But in celebration of this 800-year anniversary, we'll be talking to a big-time guest. We'll be talking with Dr. Paul Kengor. He's the author of The Stigmatists and various other big books. And this is his newest book, The Stigmatists, Their Gifts, Their Revelations, Their Warnings. And that's out from 10 books. And we'll be talking to him about this incredible phenomena and what we can make of it. And later in the show, we'll be talking with Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie from the canonization cause for Mother Theresa Dudzik. And this, you might remember, is one of my episodes of They Might Be Saints. Well, we're just releasing a brand new, an hour-long version of that program. And she'll be talking to us about her incredible life today. And that'll be airing on the 20th of this month at 3 p.m. Central Time, and that'll be on her death anniversary, so a very timely airing for that. And you can check out that, check out that episode on the 20th at 3 p.m. Central Time, and that is They Might Be Saints, Mother Mary Theresa Dudzik, and it's the story of Josephine Dudzik, who began her ministry for the elderly, sick, and poor, and she later founded the Franciscan Sisters of Chicago. And you can learn more about her canonization process in this program, this extended version of They Might Be Saints. And check out my other program, Explore with the Miracle Hunter. One of the newer episodes is coming out here. This is Monte Cassino. The breathtaking monastery Monte Cassino is the site of my exploration of St. Benedict of Nursia, the creator of the Benedictine rule and inspiration for the St. Benedict medal. That was a fascinating place to go to and truly breathtaking. That's the right way to describe that. An absolutely incredible monastery, unlike anything I've ever seen before. That's Explore with the Miracle Hunter, Monte Cassino. Check that one out on the 21st at 6 p.m. Eastern Time to see Explore with the Miracle Hunter, Monte Cassino. Later in the show, we're going to be looking at the Might Be Saint of the Day. For today's day, we've got Blessed Giulia Crostarossa, who lived from 1696 to 1755 in Italy. The 365 Days with Mary project looks at the Dolorous Mother from Legau in Germany in 1728. For today's date, September 14th. The question of the week: what countries are featured in the next season of Explore with the Miracle Hunter? And the miracle of the day is the finding of the true cross on September 14th in the year 326. Let's take a look at the miracle news. We do this every week. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's been a lot of miracle news coming out, but one of the more interesting items was that the Vatican has approved devotion to Our Lady of Mercy Shrine at Pellevoisin in France. And some of these new statements that are coming out of Rome, the highest level of approval that we're going to see going forward is this declaration of nihil obstat, which is nothing obstructs from Latin. And we say that this is an approval of faith expression. If you go to my Miracle Hunter website, you can click on the tab for Marian apparitions and click on faith expression. So I have a feeling that any of the ones that I have had previously listed under faith expression, they're probably going to go through the process of doing a formal declaration from Rome according to these new norms released last May. But in various ways, the church has already given this sort of approval. So I think that if you want to list, see things that are coming, you can go to my Miracle Hunter website and look at the faith expression section of Marian apparitions. But anyway, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith gave its consent to nihil obstat proposed by the Archbishop of Bourges concerning devotion to Our Lady of Mercy at the Marian Shrine in the small French town, where in 1876 a poor young woman, Estelle Faguet, she reported experiencing apparitions of the Virgin Mary. And the quote from the dicastery is, although it is not the current practice to express an opinion on the supernatural character or divine origin of supernatural phenomena and alleged messages, the expressions presented by Estelle are coming from the Virgin Mary have a particular value that allows us to glimpse at the action of the Holy Spirit in the midst of this spiritual experience. So you see in that quote, they are not approving the supernatural nature of this as they have in the past, but he's attributing some value to what has been claimed there. So Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, he wrote in a letter giving consent to the nihil obstat concerning Our Lady of Mercy, venerated at the Sanctuary Père-la-Voisin, a small town in central France, where in 1876 a poor young woman, Estelle Faguet, reportedly experienced several apparitions of Mary. And the letter was sent on August 22nd. And in this letter, the prefect of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, he affirmed that not only are there no doctrinal, moral, or other objections to the spiritual event, and that the faithful are authorized to give it adherence in a prudent manner, according to these norms, but in this case the devotion, which is already thriving, is also recommended, especially for those who freely will to adhere to it. So not only are they saying it's okay, but they're encouraging this devotion. And Cardinal Fernandez stated, since it offers a path of spiritual simplicity, of trust and love, it will likely do much good and will certainly benefit the whole church. So that's a very positive statement coming out of Rome. Again, no discussion of the supernaturality of this, meaning that they're not saying officially that Mary appeared there, but that the devotion, if somebody was interested in it, they could engage with it fully. So that's the miracle news from this past week, the new statement coming out of Rome, approving devotion to Our Lady of Mercy there. And you can click on that tab for Père-la-Voisin on the Miracle Hunter page. You can read the entire history of those apparitions and read the messages of those that were claimed by Estelle. Now let's take a look at Catholic Pub Trivia. We do this every week where we ask a trivia question and give out a prize to an emailer who writes in the fastest with the correct answer. Last week's question was, we talked about Nuestra Señora de Caridad del Cobre from Cuba, and I asked the question relatedly, how many popes have visited Cuba? And the answer is 3 popes have visited Cuba. John Paul II in 1998, Pope Benedict XVI in 2012, and Francis shortly thereafter in 2015. So that's the answer to last week's question, was 3. Now this week's question, we're going to be talking about Mother Mary Theresa Dudzik. She's the subject of the new hour-long version of They Might Be Saints, which airs on September 20th. The question is, how many venerables, blessed saints are from Chicago? One of them is, of course, Venerable Mother Mary Theresa Dudzik. Who are the others? Venerables, blesseds, and saints from Chicago. I'm a Chicago guy, so I'm kind of interested in this one myself. So we'll see who writes in with the fastest answer. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Paul Kengor, the author of The Stigmatists, Their Gifts, Their Revelations, Their Warnings, as we talk about that 800th anniversary of St. Francis receiving the Stigmata. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. I spend a lot of time looking at miracles. Maybe that's all I do is look at miracles. And we talk about things like Marian apparitions or Eucharistic miracles or weeping statues or incorruptible saints. Perhaps the most fascinating and strange of all phenomena that we might call miraculous or mystical in the Catholic Church is this stigmata. This is the where a saint or a mystic exhibits the wounds of Christ. And we have Catholics and Protestants alike interested in this topic, this very strange and uncomfortable and fascinating topic at that. And we're talking about it today because upon us now is the 800th anniversary of the Stigmata of St. Francis of Assisi. Perhaps he's the very first case in history. We'll talk more about that. But the commemoration of that event from September 13th, 1224, he perhaps was the very first saint to have exhibited these wounds, and we have seen perhaps as many as hundreds of other Catholic saints throughout history also exhibiting the wounds of Christ. Well, there's a brand new book that came out. I'm so excited about this book. It's called The Stigmatists, Their Gifts, Their Revelations, Their Warnings, and it's out from 10 Books. And it's written by Dr. Paul Kengor. He's a professor of political science at Grove City College. You might know him for his many books on Ronald Reagan, and his book is the basis for the new Reagan film that's in theaters now. We welcome to the program today Dr. Paul Kengor.
Yeah, Michael, I'm a big fan. I always enjoy the show. I'm a listener. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. Now, this is such an interesting topic, and I have to say that your books in the past have seemed more political in nature, and this one is a little bit of a departure. What caught your eye about Stigmata?
Well, I've done a number of books on the Cold War. I'm a Reagan biographer, historian. I've done, I think, 8 books on Ronald Reagan, and I've done several, religious books, right? And so forth. But with this in particular, Stigmata. I've never done a book like this, and it's a subject that has always interested me. When I was a Protestant, kind of an evangelical. I would see these pictures of people like Padre Pio, bleeding from his hand, and I knew that he died in 1968. I had heard that Saint Francis, who died about 800 years ago, that Saint Francis had stigmata, but a lot of people figured, well, that's medieval period. There's no video, there's no photos. Who knows if that really happened, right? But when I saw pictures and video of people like Padre Pio, others from the 20th century, quite a number of others from the 20th century, I was really intrigued. And then, too, to further learn that so many of these key stigmatists were church approved, recognized as, if not blessed, saints in many cases. They had some really remarkable prophetic vision, prophecy, and apparitions, visits from the Blessed Mother, from Jesus himself. So, I was not only kind of all eyes looking at what I saw, these photos of the stigmata, but all ears. I mean, I wanted to hear what these people with this kind of, special stamp, mark of Christ, I want to know what were they telling us?
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's kind of the basis. That's kind of the basis for the book, is that we have these people marked in history, perhaps a sign of approval, you might say, and they've given messages, and so maybe those messages are worth paying attention to. And that's in your new book called "The Stigmatists: Their Gifts, Their Revelations, Their Warnings." And so when we dial it back to the first case of stigmata, there's a debate over who was the first. Tell us a little bit. Of course, we're celebrating the 800th anniversary of St. Francis here, but was he in fact the first?
Well, some people, it's generally assumed that he was. However, now St. Paul the Apostle in the New Testament, in fact, to be specific, in Galatians 6:17, said, quote, "I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus." Now, we don't know for sure if Paul was referring to what we today would call stigmata. It's possible that he was speaking more figuratively. But he said elsewhere in the scriptures, he said, "I've been stoned, left adrift at sea, flogged, imprisoned, shipwrecked multiple times," right? Lashed all these times that went without water, sleep, food, and more. So in that sense, some people might think that he's talking more metaphorically about bearing in his body the marks of the Lord Jesus. But some others believe that he actually meant stigmata, right? The signs in the hands and in the feet. And a couple of the stigmatic mystics that I quote in the book, major visionaries in the church, Anne Catherine Emmerich, Therese Newman, neither one of which has been sainted, by the way, but blessed certainly in the case of Anne Catherine Emmerich. Among the very interesting visions that they had, Michael, I mean, they would be able to, especially Anne Catherine Emmerich, see things in the past that happened in the past in the life of Christ, in the life of the Blessed Mother, and also in the lives of many other saints. And they both actually said, Anne Catherine Emmerich and Therese Newman, that Paul was the first. They said Francis was the second. Paul was the first. So you get this period of about 1,000, a millennium, about 1,100 years to be exact, from St. Paul to Francis. And then after Francis, we've had quite a number, 13th century, 14th century, to the point where there's no single absolute authoritative Vatican count or running total on the number of stigmatists. But based on different studies that a few reputable people have done, probably about 400 or 500 stigmatists since about the time of St. Francis.
Yeah, that's right. The Vatican doesn't keep track of miracles, Marian apparitions, or stigmatists or incorruptible saints. So that's why my website, miraclehunter.com, exists, so I can catalog these things for people. But you're right. The number is around 400 to 500. And in your book, you highlight a few cases: St. Francis of Assisi, St. Catherine of Siena, and Catherine Emmerich, as you mentioned, Gemma Galgani, St. Padre Pio, Elena Aiello, Faustina. You dedicate chapters to each of those. What drew your attention to that small set out of the potential 400 or 500?
Well, it's a good question, and I'll tell you, I started with a list of about 30, and I think probably those 30 are all in the book in some way or another. You know, people like Rita of Cascia, who was given the gift of a single thorn from the crown of Jesus in her head. But I ended up with the group that I did. I felt that they had special contemporary relevance to speak to us today. Now, that might seem a bit more of a stretch with St. Francis going back to the 12th and 13th century, Catherine of Siena, who lived from 1347 to 1380. But even then, if you look at some of the statements from Catherine of Siena about the church, about the Pope in Avignon, about corrupt clergy, about sexual abuses among priests, different sexual issues, homosexuality, lack of chastity by clergy. It's pretty remarkable how what she was saying 600 plus years ago applies to a lot of the church today. But the latter figures that you mentioned, Sister Elena Aiello, who was this little nun from Calabria, Italy, she's a blessed, who died in the 1960s. Therese Newman, I don't have a chapter on her, but Padre Pio, 1968, he died. St. Faustina Kowalska, who was the first canonized saint of the new millennium, she lived from 1905 to 1938. And she's the one who, she says in her diary, that Jesus told her, "You will prepare the world for my second coming." So her prophecies and her visions seem to speak to us today, like right now. And she had some really remarkable visions of days of darkness, end times, much of it quite chilling. And because she bore this special stamp of approval from the Vatican as a canonized saint, and also stigmata. Now, she had invisible stigmata, but she's somebody that I think her words in her diary, we ought to be paying special attention to.
Absolutely. We're talking today with Dr. Paul Kengor, professor of political science at Grove City College and author of the new book from TAN, The Stigmatists. I give presentations around the country, perhaps 20 a year at different shrines and parishes and conferences. And I was speaking about the stigmata at one point, and I remember this thankfully doesn't happen very often, but a young man stood up in the middle of my presentation and he said, "Are all the wounds the same? Do they occur in the exact same place on every saint?" And I said, no, of course. You have the case of the thorn in the forehead, some just in the hands, some in the hands and the feet, some in the side. Therese Newman of Germany, you see 60 lash marks on the back. And so, this young man, unfortunately, he said, well, if they're not all in exactly the same spot in the same number, then we know it's fake. And he walked out of my presentation. So talk to us a little bit about the variability in stigmata. We see some cases like St. Francis, where it's almost a three-dimensional nail mark. And we have others with a great difference in these wounds. What do we make of the variability of stigmata cases?
Well, first of all, the answer, right, is that God alone knows. But it's undeniable when we're looking at these marks with our own eyes. And it always begins with, usually a skeptical priest, right? And then the priest comes and looks, and this is a member of his parish or somebody in the order, somebody at a convent, one of the brothers at San Giovanni Rotondo, Padre Pio's case, whatever. Then pretty soon they're bringing in psychiatrists, they're bringing in medical doctors, they're bringing in atheistic scientists, they're bringing in Vatican officials, including a formal devil's advocate from the Vatican. These people are incredibly scrutinized, and it becomes very clear that there's certainly no way they could fake what's going on, especially in the cases of people, someone like Padre Pio, whose wounds are bleeding continuously for 50 years. They never get infected, right? But they're bleeding continuously. And then in other cases, you have some saints who like clockwork, Michael, would start going into a kind of personal agony on a Thursday. They start bleeding like clockwork on a Friday, Good Friday, and then you right through 3 o'clock. And then when all of this is over, they kind of slow down, and then just right in front of your very eyes, in front of this team of observers, the wounds just suddenly, slowly vanish, and you're left with, in some of the cases of some of these stigmatists, not even a scab.
That's right. No scar, no scab, no sign that happened. It's
right.
it's truly a mystery.
You can't fake that. And now, of course, Jesus doesn't give all of the different stigmatists the exact same wound. But by the way, they tend to be in the palms, so. And that would be clear. Some of them are a side wound. Like I said, some of them might be crown of thorns or a single crown. Now, an interesting thing here that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, several of the stigmatists had the shoulder wound of Christ and made a point of saying that Therese Newman and others who would say that the one wound that kind of vexed or hurt Jesus the most was the shoulder wound, which is something that people wouldn't visibly see because it's usually covered up. In the case of the stigmatist, it might be a bruise, it might not always be bleeding. But when you consider theologically that Jesus told us, Michael, if you want to follow me, pick up your cross and carry me. Pick up your cross and carry it. Pick up your cross and carry it. So in a way, I think it's kind of profoundly fitting that the one wound that would kind of struck him the most, and that he bore as kind of his heaviest injury would be that shoulder wound.
Absolutely. Very well put. We're talking today with Dr. Paul Kengor, the author of the new book, The Stigmatist, out from Tan Books. And as we wrap up the interview today, we have to remember, and you put this in your book, you talk about stigmatists amongst us, that this is not something that has only happened centuries ago, but this is a phenomenon still happening in the world today. Given that, what do you think that the appropriate posture should be for interested Catholics and otherwise who hear of this phenomena, these people who are claiming these things, perhaps even ahead of the Church's judgment? How should we handle cases of stigmata in the modern world?
Good question. People need to be careful, vigilant, cautious, skeptical, right, to a degree. I would want to see video. I'd want to see pictures. And I would also, though, caution people not to just be dismissive of this. Padre Pio had many skeptics in his time. And, he had the stigmata right up until they vanished just a few days before he died in September 1968. And then it was still many years after that this great saint, probably the best known, Catholic in the world in the 20th century, other than maybe John Paul II, maybe Mother Teresa, maybe Fulton Sheen. It took decades before he was canonized. So oftentimes these people aren't officially recognized by the Church until long after they're gone. So don't be dismissive of these claims, but also be careful and don't just believe anything that you read on, any website.
Absolutely. Well, we're so grateful to you, Dr. Paul Kengor, for talking to us about your new book, The Stigmatist, out from Tan Books. And what's the best place that people can go to learn more about you and your work, or to pick up this book?
Yeah, I would just say type in my name, Paul Kengor, into Amazon. You can get my books there.
Wonderful. Well, we're so grateful to you for joining us on today's program.
Well, thanks so much, Michael.
God bless. That was Dr. Paul Kengor, professor of political science at Grove City College and author of the brand new book, The Stigmatists. We're so grateful to him talking to us about this fascinating phenomena of stigmata here on the 800th anniversary of the Stigmata of St. Francis, the very first in history. We need to take a short break. But when we come back, we're going to be looking at the question of the week. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Hey, I love getting your questions. People write in from around the world with questions about miracles happening in today's world and those that have happened centuries ago. And I love getting the questions in the inbox. I do think I have one of the more interesting inboxes of anybody you'll ever meet. People ask a lot of interesting things, report a lot of interesting things to me. But I also like answering these questions in person. And I give talks around the country, maybe 20 talks a year at different Catholic shrines or churches or events. And I speak for about 45 minutes. These days I've been talking a lot about Eucharistic miracles because it lines up with the Eucharistic revival in our American church here. But I love getting those questions at the end, and I answer as many as people have. So that's always fun for me. If you want to invite me to your parish, you can go to the miraclehunter.com website, and you can click on the contact tab and send me a message that way. And maybe I'll be speaking at a parish in your area sometime soon. And so the question of the week is kind of a fun one for me. It's an easy one. I don't have to think too hard about it, but people have been asking, so I thought I should report on this. The question is, what locations will be featured in the next season of Explore with the Miracle Hunter? We've filmed, I think, something like 60 episodes of that program. Maybe 40 of them have aired. You can go to EWTN On Demand to watch any of the ones that have aired already, and you can tune in every Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time to see these episodes of Explore with the Miracle Hunter, which is really an amazing show. I love it's amazing for me, I should say, that the opportunity to travel the world and present these stories on EWTN. You know, we've traveled all over Poland and Lithuania and all over Europe, Italy and France and Ireland and England, and some of those episodes have come out. And but my latest efforts to follow up on that question, what's the next season? I was in South America this past year. So I filmed in Colombia, that miraculous image of Our Lady of Las Lajas, the Chiquinquirá image, and also in Colombia, in Ecuador, Our Lady of Good Success, and also El Quinche. In Argentina, several sites there. There's a Eucharistic miracle site there. Also the Our Lady of Luján, the Marian title of Argentina. In Peru, we're looking at the life of St. Rose of Lima. In Chile, in Santiago, the miraculous image that's there as well. So we've been all over South America, capturing that footage and bringing it back, turning it into episodes of Explore with the Miracle Hunter. So we'll definitely have a South American flavor in this next season. We'll be moving away from Europe for just a moment for some of these new episodes. So thanks so much for writing in with that question. And if you have a question for the Miracle Hunter, you can send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. Let's take a look at the 365 Days with Mary project. We do this every week where we look at the Marian devotion of the day. We all know Fatima, May 13th, or Lourdes, February 11th, or Guadalupe, December 12th. But believe it or not, there's a different Marian devotion that lines up to each and every day of the calendar year. We're talking about feast days, we're talking about miracles that happened, or the building of a basilica, or other ways that Mary is commemorated in all the countries of the world. It's pretty amazing that there's one for each and every day of the year. And so for today's date, September 14th, we've got the Dolorous Mother from Legau in Germany in the year 1728. And the story goes that the parish church of Steinbach in 1728 acquired a set of painted wooden statues of the Crucifixion, the Sorrowful Mother, and St. John. And 2 years later, parishioners gave accounts that the statue of Our Lady of Sorrows was moving its eyes, crying, and changing complexion. Miracles and healings also accompanied this prodigy, and the bishop of the diocese established a formal investigation that found the miracles valid in 1734. A large Baroque church was built for the increasing number of pilgrims, and at the end of the 18th century, the crowds and miracles lessened, but the shrine still hosts 4 major pilgrimages annually: the Monday after Pentecost, the Feast of the Holy Cross on May 3rd and September 14th, and the Veterans Pilgrimage on the last Saturday of October. And so that is the Dolorous Mother from Legau in Germany in the year 1728, and the miraculous statue there For more information on this fascinating devotion or any of the hundreds of other Marian devotions from around the world, you can go to 365dayswithmary.com. You can pick up the book. You can download the app from the Apple iOS App Store, or you can go to 365 Days with Mary on Facebook and join any of the 10,000 followers who follow Marian devotions each and every day. Let's take a look at the miracle of the day. We've been doing that this year, where we talk about the miracles or in throughout Christian history that line up exactly to the day's date. For today's date, we have September 14th, and the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross, also known as the Triumph of the Cross or the Elevation of the Cross, is celebrated on September 14th by many Christians. And this feast day commemorates the discovery and recovery of the true cross of Jesus Christ and includes the following events. The discovery of the cross, according to tradition, St. Helen, or Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, discovered the cross on September 14th, 326, while on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And the construction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Constantine built the Church of the Holy Sepulchre on the site of the cross's discovery, and the return of the cross to Jerusalem. Tradition says that Emperor Heraclius, he carried the cross back to Jerusalem on September 14th, the anniversary of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre's dedication. So September 14th is a big day for miracles related to the true cross of Christ. Let's take a look at the sainthood news. We do this every week where we connect to the project They Might Be Saints. People probably know that there's a television series that airs on EWTN on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Time called They Might Be Saints, about Americans on the path to sainthood and the search for canonization miracles. We look at the lives of servants of God, venerables, and blesseds before they have all their miracles and are declared saints by Rome. And there's also a book out called They Might Be Saints. I think it's my best book. You can get it from EWTNRC.com that details in America we have these people on the path to sainthood and hardly anybody knows them. So this book tells the biographies of some of the amazing people who will be saints someday. And so for today's date, we like to look at the sainthood news. We'd like to look at who is coming down the pipeline, you might say, people who might be saints recognized by Rome. And so in the recent past, Pope Francis received an audience, His Eminence Cardinal Marcello Semeraro, the prefect for the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints. And during this audience, the Pope authorized the same dicastery to promulgate a decree regarding the heroic virtues of the servant of God, Vicenta Guilarte Alonso, the professed nun of the Congregation for the Daughters of Jesus. She was born on January 25th, 1879 in Rojas de Borella in Spain and died in Leopoldina in Brazil on July 6, 1960. And according to the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints website, she was a professed nun of the Congregation of the Daughters of Jesus. She was admired and sought after by the faithful for her Christian testimony. She dedicated herself mainly to people in situations of weakness, poverty, and illness, and always maintained a charitable and cordial attitude with the sisters, who found in her a close, affectionate, and understanding person, always ready to comfort those in difficulty. So that is now Venerable Vicenta Guilarte Alonso, and with one miracle, she will be named Blessed Vicenta. And let's take a look at the Might Be Saint of the Day. We do this every week where we talk about somebody on the path to sainthood whose feast day or death anniversary lines up exactly with the day's date. And for today's date, September 14th, we've got the memorial of Blessed Giulia Crosta Rossa, who lived in Italy from 1696 to 1755. She was the 10th of 12 children in her family, and at age 20, she and her sisters enter the Carmelite monastery of Marigliano in Italy. And when it was suppressed 5 years later, she moved to a monastery at Scala, and taking the name Sister Maria Celeste. On April 25th, 1725, while still a novice, she had a series of visions in which she saw a new congregation of nuns, and even was given its rule. She was the co-founder of the Order of the Redemptoristine Nuns on May 13th, 1731. And she died on the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross on September 14th, 1755 in Foggia, in Italy, of natural causes, and she's interred there in a monastery at Foggia. She was declared venerable in 2013 by Pope Francis, and she was beatified on June 18th, 2016, also by Pope Francis. And her beatification was celebrated at the square of the Basilica Sanctuary of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Madre Dio Incoronata, in Foggia, in Italy, and presided by Cardinal Angelo Amato. And so that is Blessed Julia Crostarossa. With one more miracle, she will become Saint Julia. For those people who want to check out the television series They Might Be Saints, about Americans on the path to sainthood, it airs every week on Wednesdays on EWTN television, and we have a special broadcast coming up on Friday, the 20th of September at 3 p.m. Central Time, and that is They Might Be Saints, Mother Mary Theresa Dudzik. And Josephine Dudzik began a ministry for the elderly, sick, and poor. She later founded the Franciscan Sisters of Chicago. You can learn more about her canonization progress on this episode. And this is actually a 60-minute version, hour-long version of the 30-minute program. So this is a brand new broadcast coming out on Friday, the 20th of September at 3 p.m. Central Time about Mother Mary Theresa Dudzik. You're going to want to check this one out. This is perhaps our best episode yet. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie from the Chicago Franciscans, talking to us about Venerable Mary Theresa Dudzik and that new program coming out on September 20th. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. People who have tuned into the show the last week or two know that I just released a new book, and it ties in with my EWTN television series, They Might Be Saints, which airs on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The name of the book is the same as the show. It's called They Might Be Saints on the Path to Sainthood in America. And in that book, I feature 24 venerables and blesseds. And these are people who were either born in the United States or spent the majority of their lives in the United States. And being a Chicagoan myself, I'm very proud that we have 3 venerables, Father Augustus Tolton, Mother Maria Kaupas, and also Mary Theresa Dudzik. And we're so excited today to talk with the vice postulator of that canonization cause, and that is Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
Well, so excited to chat with you about somebody, a saint, a future saint that many people, even in the Chicago area, might not be familiar with. So it'll be great to shed some light on this future saint from Chicago. And so I think one of the interesting things when I did some research on her life, I saw that even in her childhood, she showed a care and preference and interest in caring for the poor, even at an early age. Talk about Mary Theresa's interest in tending to the poor.
As a little girl, she lived in her poor village of Płacic, Poland. Times were really tight there. The village is so small, it actually doesn't even have a Catholic church, which you can imagine is very unusual for Poland. And she saw beggars there. And her family had said to her, we got to be careful. You got a brother and some sisters. We need to really keep our wealth to ourselves here just to make it through. But not her. She would see the poor and encounter a couple of beggars, and as much as she has promised her mom and dad, her blue eyes would go soft with compassion, and she would again share her coins with the poor, or supper with a poor girl, or take some food that she put aside over to a sick neighbor. That was how she was, and her family regaled that story to us, so that's how we know it.
Amazing. And I know of her, and some Americans know of her because she eventually immigrated to the United States and spent time in Chicago. Talk about that aspect of her life where she came to the United States.
Yes. Her family came over in 1881, which would be about 10 years after the Great Fire. And that Great Fire really had an influence on her life here in the United States. She came over already trained as a seamstress and was able to do fine needlework and things like that. So she had a nice, comfortable life with her family. She was taking care of her elderly father and mother. Her other siblings had gone off and married, etc., or joined a convent, but she stayed back and took care of them. But as she did did the work. She would walk out on the streets, to deliver her goods, and she would see the poor and the homeless. And the situation was dire because restrictions after the Great Fire said that everyone must rebuild in brick to avoid another Great Fire. And people couldn't afford brick. You being from Chicago know how expensive brick is, and houses to this day have face brick, and the rest is that kind of junky looking stuff. So people couldn't. So they crowded together in rental houses, especially on the north, south, and west where the fire hadn't struck. The population was booming like crazy because of the situation in Europe. People were immigrating over here. And as she saw all these homeless people and all those epidemics hit the city with diphtheria and typhoid, especially because of the crowded conditions, everybody breathing on each other, and we being in a pandemic know what that can be like.
Right.
She said, I've got to do something about it. So when her father passed away, she was just with her mom, and she said, we've got room in the house. I want to take some people in and start to care for them. And so she started to do that. And then being a member of the Third Order of St. Francis, the secular division, she turned to some of her friends that were also in the Third Order and said to them, do you want to help me? And that's how the idea of a congregation grew.
Amazing. We're talking today with Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie, the Vice Postulator for Venerable Mary Theresa Dudzik. And this is, of course, very near and dear to your heart because you are a member of the Franciscan Sisters of Chicago yourself. How did it come to be that she ended up founding this order?
She ended up founding the order, not because she really wanted to found a religious order, but Father Barshinsky, who was the pastor at St. Stanislaus Kostka up on the northwest side, said to her, if you're going to make this into something stable, what happens if you end up dying from one of these, diphtheria, typhoid, or whatever? What if the other women lose heart? Are you going to turn those people out and send them back on the street? If you ladies all decided that you would become religious and founded a religious order, there would be stability. There would be some way that these people could be cared for in perpetuity. Also, the fact that you, as an unmarried woman, are taking men and women into your house, that starts to look a little shady and rumors could start. So the best protection would be for you to become religious. Well, she thought about it and talked to her, confers in the order, Third Order with her, and they decided yes. And so on December 8th, 1894, the Franciscan Sisters of Chicago were born.
Wonderful. Well, what a fascinating beginning to this order. And we're talking today with Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie, the Vice Postulator of the canonization cause for Venerable Mary Theresa Dudzik. And when someone is proposed as a saint, it's a long process. And then when they're declared venerable, their life of heroic virtue has been thoroughly investigated and established. Talk a little bit about that process of how she ended up being declared venerable.
Well, it was a long process. We actually first started it in 1960s, so it was like 100 years after her birth, And we had a retreat master came in who actually had been in the death camps in Poland and survived that entire thing. And he came here to the United States, and they invited him to do retreats because we still at that time had a lot of Polish immigrant sisters. And when he heard about our foundress and looked into it, he said, oh, my goodness, do you realize you've got a saint here? And so the cause was born. And the Vatican, of course, looks at what are the key virtues, and chief of these is charity. As we know, that's the queen of all the virtues, of the theological virtues. And, as we look even at the writings of Paul, he talks about love or charity being supreme. And so I'd like to share with you a story of her heroic charity, which was part of what sparked that. When you're looking at all those early sisters, they're working in the cramped space of an apartment where everyone was forever at everyone else's elbow. They tried to keep up a positive spirit, but they were already older single women joining an order. They were used to making their own schedules, their own decisions and plans, and so it was tough to go into the whole thing of obedience and poverty. You know, chastity was not an issue with them, but the other two, oh my, characters conflicted with each other. And because the work they were doing to gain money was either sewing or taking in the laundry from the rectory. Now, let me tell you, that rectory had, guess what, 30 priests.
Oh, my.
That's how big that parish was. So doing the laundry for 30 men, plus the altar cloths and everything, and doing it all by hand, the sisters working doing the laundry felt totally overwhelmed. Laundry by hand was removing stains using a scrub board and a bar of soap, lifting up heavy, wet loads of sheets and altar linens from tubs of boiling, soapy water. You had to wring it out by hand, rinse it in large basins, lift it up and wring it out again, put it into the hot starch, wring it out again, carry it outdoors, put it on the lines to dry, take it down again, sprinkle it, and then iron it damp. Those sisters doing the laundry were convinced they had the hardest job of all.
Wow.
They saw Sister Teresa and the couple other sisters, seamstresses, as having an unfair advantage of light, easy needlework. Soon there was no peace. Teresa tried to reason with them that they lacked the training for being a seamstress, but that fell on deaf, angry ears. Finally, she agreed to exchange jobs. Within a week, that was disastrous. Clients for the tailoring work were appalled at the drop in quality and quickly voiced their displeasure. These new seamstresses moaned that they were unaccustomed to dealing with such fussy people, that sewing was tedious and boring, and that this was no solution to the fact that all the work, regardless of the job, was too hard. Oh, Sister Teresa took a deep breath and remembered her promise to be faithful to the community. The community and the needy required the income from these jobs. There's simply no other paying jobs to be had for women at the time. So she turned to God for prayer for patience, help, rearranged the work schedule, took back her tailoring clients, and added to her own full schedule additional hours in the laundry doing the heaviest work herself. Her mother, who lived with her, begged her to remember that she had to guard her health and refrain from overwork. She always was a frail person. She threw that caution to the wind. She was willing to sacrifice her life for the love of Jesus, whom she saw in the faces of the poor and hungry. Years later, in her chronicle, her remembrance book, she wrote, "I would consider it even great happiness to be able to suffer for the greater glory of God and the good of this community."
Wow, an amazing life. We're talking about Venerable Mary Theresa Dudzik with Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie, the vice postulator for her canonization cause, and got a little insight into her life and what she went through in the founding and running of that order. Now, when we talk about her canonization cause, we have 4 steps that we all know about: servant of God, venerable, blessed, and saint. She's currently at station number 2, venerable. Her life of heroic virtue has been established. And so what happens next? What needs to happen in order for her to move to blessed?
Well, the next thing we need is the miracle. And the miracles that people typically look for are healings attributed to the intercession of the saint or to contact with her relics. The first one that we looked at occurred in 1972 right here in Chicago, where we had that Illinois Central train crash. 45 people were killed, 332 were injured, and among the injured was a teenager, Jerry Lisetsky. He went into a coma. The doctors said he'd never recover. He had major injuries all over. But his mom just said, "He's got to come back. I want my son back." So she came to our mother house and went over at the sarcophagus, which is the enclosure around Mother Teresa's coffin that we have in our chapel. And it was right after Christmas, and she took leaves from the poinsettia plants that were up on top of the sarcophagus, took them to the hospital, and placed them on Jerry's 5 senses, and prayed a 9-day novena to Mother Teresa. On the 9th day, Jerry woke up. Medical records were retrieved, and the doctors testified before an archdiocesan tribunal that it was beyond anything that could have been done, and that even in 2003, when this trial went on, medicine still would not have gotten him back. However, it didn't meet the requirements of the Vatican process, and in 2010, the process stagnated. A second possible miracle occurred in Normal, Illinois, near Peoria, where, John Rushkowski, an 80-some-year-old man, was really worried about his health, and he wanted to stay alive to care for his wife, who was experiencing dementia. He got a picture of Mother Teresa cut out of the Catholic newspaper that featured a little story about that whole train miracle, and he decided he was going to pray to her. He had been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease, and as Dr. Bruja said, he only had 6 months to live. As that diagnosis sank into his mind, he turned even more to Mother Teresa, held the picture to himself, and prayed to her. The doctor later reported, "I can't believe it. He's recovering." And it gave us a letter saying that he considered that this was something from prayer. Dr. Bruja said, "Prayer and grace help in all circumstances. It is never misdiagnosed. It is never a medication error. It is never negligent like medicine can be." So John made the recovery. His wife died March 9th, and on March 26th, he died, and the family believes that Mother Teresa granted his prayer to keep him alive to care for his wife till she passed.
An amazing story of a miracle, favor, or grace through the intercession of Venerable Mary Theresa Dudzik. Well, we're so grateful to you, Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie, for talking to us about this up-and-coming future saint. And if people want to find out more about her life and perhaps find a prayer or to seek her intercession, what's the best website or perhaps book that people can find out more information?
Okay, we have a website, MotherTeresaDudzik.com. And Teresa's with an H in it, and Dudzik is D-U-D-Z-I-K. So MotherTeresaDudzik.com. That is her beatification site, and you'll find all kinds of stories there, more detail about these, miracle or miraculous things. We can't really officially call them a miracle. You can also find it at Chicago Franciscans with an S.com, which is the website of our order. Additionally, we have been able to put into print Mother Teresa's Chronicle, her own personal memories of the founding of the order and what it was all like. It comes in a color edition, a black and white edition, and also an ebook, and is available through Amazon Books. Again, the Chronicle by Venerable Mother Mary Theresa. Also, Michael,
Wonderful.
You have a book.
Yes, I do. Yeah, the new book is called They Might Be Saints. It was just come out a week or so ago, and one of the 24 chapters on venerables and blesseds in America is on Venerable Mary Theresa. So people can find out more about her life and that book as well. So thank you for that, and thank you for the great interview, Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie, for joining us on today's program and shedding some light on the future saint, Venerable Mary Theresa Dudzik. Thanks so much for being with us on the program today.
Thank you. God bless all of you, and may Mother Teresa shine her light upon you.
God bless. That was Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie talking to us about the incredible life of Venerable Mary Theresa Dudzik. Pick up the book, The Chronicle. You can go to Amazon.com for that, or you can pick up my book, They Might Be Saints, where I have a chapter dedicated to her incredible life. And that's all the time we have for today's show. If you missed any of this episode or want to catch up on past episodes, you can go to EWTN.com/radio, check out the audio archives, or download the free EWTN app. I'd like to thank our guest today, Sister Jeanne Marie Toriskie, talking to us about Mother Mary Theresa Dudzik and the new program coming out on September 20th. And also Dr. Paul Kengor, the author of The Stigmatist, talking to us about St. Francis on this 800th anniversary of the first stigmata in history. Check out my program, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, which airs on the 21st of September at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monte Cassino. The breathtaking monastery at Monte Cassino is the site for this exploration of St. Benedict of Nursia, the creator of the Benedictine rule, and inspiration for the St. Benedict Medal. Check that one out on the 21st of this month at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And thank you for joining me today on Miracle Hunter, where from claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt. Talk to you next week.